The grand chamber of Nexus Prime Station stretched before Ambassador Minjun Park like a vast cathedral of chrome and crystal. 200 species filled the council seats, their forms ranging from towering insectoids to floating gas beings contained in shimmering fields. All of them stared down at the lone human standing in the center of the speaking floor. Minjun adjusted his dark suit and waited. He had represented Earth for 12 years in this chamber. He knew what was coming. Council Speaker Vorntax, a reptilian creature with scales that shifted between purple and black, activated his voice amplifier. Ambassador Park, the Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's continued membership. The chamber fell silent. Minjun could hear his own heartbeat. For 50 standard years, humanity has been part of our great community. Vorntax continued. In that time, Earth has violated protocols on 147 separate occasions. You expand into restricted zones. You militarize trade routes. You interfere in the affairs of developing species. Without authorization, Minjun kept his face neutral. Each violation Vorntax listed had saved lives. The expansion into restricted zones had stopped the Krellian death camps. The militarized trade routes protected merchants from pirates the Council ignored. The interference had prevented 3 genocides. We have been patient, Vorntax said. We have issued warnings, levied fines, offered guidance. Yet humanity continues to act as though our rules do not apply to them. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Minjun recognized the tone. This was not a trial. This was a performance. The decision had already been made. The Council has prepared terms for humanity's continued membership. Vorntax announced. A holographic document materialized above the speaking floor. Text scrolling in hundreds of languages. You will reduce your military to 15% of current strength. You will withdraw from all colonies established in the past 20 years. You will cease all contact with species below Level 4 development status. You will submit all technological advances for Council approval before implementation. Minjun scanned the terms. They were worse than he had expected. Earth would become a prison planet. Humanity stripped of everything that made them effective in the galaxy. These terms are non-negotiable, Vorntax added. You have 1 standard cycle to provide Earth's formal acceptance. Failure to comply will result in immediate economic sanctions and isolation from all Council systems. Minjun had prepared 3 speeches for this moment. 1 if the Council was reasonable. 1 if they demanded compromises. 1 if they revealed their true nature. He chose the third. Council Speaker Vorntax, honored representatives, Minjun began, his voice steady and clear. I have listened to your accusations. I have reviewed your demands. I understand your position perfectly. He paused, looking around the vast chamber. Some species watched with curiosity. Others with barely concealed contempt. 23 years ago, the Venthali corporate guilds were strip mining the Delcarian homeworld, poisoning their water and destroying their forests. The Delcari petitioned the Council 17 times for intervention. The Council formed a committee to study the issue. The committee took 6 years to produce a report. By then, 40% of Delcarian children had birth defects from the contamination. Vorntax's scales darkened. Ambassador, this is not. Earth sent 3 ships. Minjun continued, his voice rising. We evacuated the mining operations, arrested the guild leaders, and helped the Delcari sue for reparations. The Council called this a violation of non-interference protocols. The Delcari called it salvation. He walked slowly across the speaking floor, making eye contact with different representatives. 14 years ago, the Krellian Empire began systematically exterminating the Favari species. Their crime was living on a planet with rare minerals. The Favari sent distress signals for 8 months. The Council debated jurisdiction while 60 million people died. Those were internal Krellian affairs, a delegate called out. Earth did not see it that way, Minjun replied. We deployed our fleet, established a no-fly zone, and evacuated 200,000 Favari refugees. The Council condemned our aggression. The Fovari named their new colony Hope Station. The chamber buzzed with agitated conversation. Vorn Tax slammed his speaking staff against the floor, demanding silence. "You prove our point, Ambassador," Vorn Tax said coldly. "You act without consensus. You impose your primitive morality on complex situations. You are too young, too reckless, too certain of your righteousness." Minjun stopped walking. He stood perfectly still in the center of the chamber. "You are correct about one thing," he said quietly. "We are certain. Certain that when people cry for help, you help them. Certain that when genocide happens, you stop it. Certain that protecting the innocent is not a violation of protocol. It is the most basic moral duty of anyone with the power to act." "Enough." Vorn Tax's voice boomed through the chamber. "The Council has spoken. You will accept our terms or face the consequences." Minjun reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a data chip. He held it up so the chamber's sensors could register it. "This contains Earth's formal response to the Galactic Council," he said. "It has been authorized by our planetary government and carries the full weight of humanity's decision." He placed the chip into the speaking floor's data port. Text appeared in the air, short and simple. "Earth hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately." For 3 full seconds, the chamber was absolutely silent. Then the laughter began. It started with the Morgothi delegation, their barking guffaws echoing off the walls. The Centaxians joined in, their musical chimes taking on a mocking tone. Within moments, 2/3 of the chamber was laughing. "Withdraw?" Vorntax said, his voice dripping with amusement. "Ambassador Park, no species survives outside the Council. Our trade networks span the galaxy. Our technology enables interstellar travel. Our institutions maintain peace and order. You think your primitive world can stand alone?" Minjun gathered his papers calmly. He had expected this reaction. "I think humanity will be fine," he said simply. "You will come crawling back within a year," a Xinthian delegate shouted, begging to be readmitted. "Perhaps," Minjun acknowledged. He walked toward the chamber's exit, his footsteps echoing. At the doorway, he turned back one last time. "Or perhaps you will discover what the galaxy looks like when someone is not cleaning up your messes." He walked out while the council chamber still rang with laughter. Behind him, Vorntax activated the chamber's communication systems. "Attention, all council systems. Earth has been officially removed from our protection and privileges. All species are advised to cease trade and cooperation with humanity immediately. They have chosen isolation. Let them experience its full consequences." Minjun heard the proclamation as he walked down the long corridor to his ship. He allowed himself a small smile. The council thought this was an ending. They had no idea it was just the beginning. Dr. Ji-Woo Chen stood in the command center of Earth's Strategic Coordination Office, watching 300 holographic displays showing human colonies across the galaxy. Each one showed the same message blinking in red. "Council embargo in effect. Reports coming in from all sectors," her assistant said. "Council species are cutting trade agreements. Orbital stations denying docking rights. 3 colonies report Council security forces demanding our personnel leave within 48 hours. Ji-Woo nodded calmly. She had been planning for this moment for 5 years. "Activate protocol separation," she said. Across human space, the order rippled through secure channels. Colony administrators opened sealed instructions. Ship captains accessed hidden navigation charts. Trade directors retrieved carefully concealed contact lists. Earth had not been idle during their 50 years in the Council. "Begin consolidation of all personnel from mixed-species stations," Ji-Woo ordered. "Redirect shipping to independent routes. Activate alternative supply chains." Her assistant looked worried. "Director Chen, the alternative networks. They cannot possibly match Council infrastructure. We will lose 70% of our trade capacity." "Check again," Ji-Woo said with a slight smile. "Look at the Venari connections." The assistant pulled up the data, then stared in surprise. "These trade volumes. The Venari have been routing 20% of their commerce through us, but that violates Council regulations. The Venari, remember when we saved them from Krellian aggression 12 years ago, Jiwoo explained. The Council issued a stern warning and did nothing. We evacuated their population centers while they were under bombardment. Gratitude is a powerful foundation for partnership. More reports appeared on the displays. Species humanity had helped were quietly reaching out. The Delcari offered mining contracts. The Fovari opened their space stations to human ships. The Talaxian Federation proposed direct trade agreements. We also have these, Jiwoo said, pulling up another set of files. Technology assessments. The data showed decades of human research. While Council species had grown complacent with standardized technology, human engineers had been tinkering, improving, adapting. Our jump drives are 30% more efficient than Council standard models, Jiwoo noted. Our medical technology surpassed theirs 8 years ago. Our agricultural yields are double the galactic average. The Council thought they were generous sharing their technology with primitive humans. They did not realize we would make it better. Arcprom. On the outer colonies, Captain Sujin Lee received the consolidation orders aboard her destroyer, the Rising Phoenix. Her small fleet of 12 ships patrolled the border between human space and Council territory. Captain, we have incoming, her sensor officer reported. 3 Council inspection fleets. 42 ships total. They are broadcasting demands that we withdraw from this sector immediately. Sujin studied the tactical display. The Council ships outgunned her fleet 4-1. In a straight fight, she would lose. Fortunately, humans rarely fought straight. Helm, move us to intercept position Gamma 7, she ordered. Communications, open a channel. The Council fleet commander appeared on screen. A Morgothi admiral, with too many teeth showing in what might have been a smile. Human vessel, you are in violation of Council space protocols. Withdraw immediately, or you will be removed by force. Sujin kept her voice pleasant. Admiral, according to my charts, this sector was designated neutral space under the Treaty of Nexus 4. We have as much right to be here as you do. That treaty is void now that Earth has abandoned the Council, the Admiral snarled. Interesting, Sujin replied. So you are declaring new territorial boundaries without negotiation? I will be sure Earth includes that in our official records. I am certain the independent species will find it very interesting that the Council now claims ownership of neutral zones. The Admiral's expression shifted slightly. Several minor species used these neutral zones. If the Council started claiming them unilaterally, it would cause diplomatic problems. We are here to inspect vessels for contraband, the Admiral said, changing tactics. You are welcome to request permission to inspect our ships, Sujin said. When we are docked at a recognized neutral port. Out here, any attempt to forcibly board will be considered an act of piracy and met with appropriate defense. You dare threaten Council forces, Sujin smiled coldly. I am simply clarifying the rules of engagement. Your 42 ships against my 12. You will win. Certainly. But 3 months ago, a single human destroyer held off 6 Krellian cruisers for 7 hours using defensive tactics and electronic warfare. How many of your ships will we damage before you destroy us? How will you explain those losses to your government? What will other species think when they learn the mighty Council needed overwhelming force to defeat a small human patrol? The Admiral's image flickered as he muted his microphone to consult with his officers. Sujin waited patiently. This is not over, the Admiral finally said. Earth will regret leaving Council protection. Perhaps, Sujin agreed. But today is not that day. Safe travels. Admiral. The Council fleet held position for 10 more minutes, running sensor scans and trying to intimidate the human ships. Then they turned and jumped away. Sujin exhaled slowly. Well, that could have gone worse. Captain, more incoming, the sensor officer reported. Wait. These are not military transponders. civilian vessels. 5 merchant ships, requesting permission to dock. Origin, Delcari Registry. They say they have cargo bound for human colonies, and wish to discuss direct trade arrangements. Sujin allowed herself a real smile this time. Back on Earth, Jiwoo watched the data streams update. Council embargo holding firm in official channels. Independent networks activating smoothly. Human colonies reporting stable supplies. 3 more species requesting private meetings, her assistant reported. 2 are officially still council members. Schedule them, Jiwoo said. Keep them confidential. Director. The council will consider this subversion. The council will consider anything we do a problem, Jiwoo replied. But they cannot stop species from talking to each other. And they cannot force loyalty through threats. That only works until someone offers an alternative. She pulled up long-range intelligence reports. The council was in emergency session, debating their response. Hardliners wanted military action. Moderates urged caution. Everyone agreed. Earth had to fail quickly to prevent other species from getting ideas. Let them watch, Jiwoo said quietly. Let them see that humanity does not need their permission to thrive. Across the galaxy, the great separation continued. It was messy and difficult, and created 1,000 small problems. But it was also working. Earth was not collapsing. Humanity was not crawling back to beg for readmission. The council had assumed they were irreplaceable. They were about to learn otherwise, 6 months after Earth's withdrawal. Ambassador Yeon Park stood in her new office on Horizon Station, humanity's largest independent outpost, where her father had once represented Earth to the council. She now coordinated the growing network of species seeking alternatives. The wall screens showed news from across the galaxy. Most of it was bad. The Krillian Empire had invaded the Venari homeworld 3 days ago. The same Venari who had helped humanity decades earlier when Earth first reached the stars. The same Venari who had quietly maintained trade with humans after the council embargo. On screen, cities burned. Refugees fled in desperate streams. Krillian forces swept across the planet with brutal efficiency. The Galactic Council was holding emergency sessions. They had been holding emergency sessions for 3 days now. Subcommittees were forming. Resolutions were being drafted. Procedural debates continued. People were dying while bureaucrats argued about jurisdiction. Yuan's communication console lit up. She pressed accept, and the face of Commander Hyun-woo Kim appeared, his scarred features set in grim determination. Ambassador Park, the 5th Fleet is ready. We have 28 combat ships, 42 transports, and medical facilities for 2 million evacuees. We can reach Venari space in 30 hours. The Council has not authorized intervention, Yun said carefully. The Council can take however many weeks they need to authorize whatever they want, Hyun-woo replied. We leave in 20 minutes. I am not asking for permission. I am informing you as a courtesy. Yeon felt pride and worry in equal measure. This was who humans were. But it was also exactly the behavior the Council had punished them for. Go, she said. Bring them home. The 5th Fleet jumped to hyperspace, while the Council was still debating whether the Krillian invasion was technically illegal under current treaties. 31 hours later, Commander Hyun-woo brought his fleet out of hyperspace on the edge of the Venari system. Krillian ships filled the tactical display, their weapons pounding planetary defenses. All ships, combat formation Delta, Hyun-woo ordered, transports to the back. Combat vessels with me. We are going to create a corridor for evacuation, and we are going to hold it for as long as it takes. The human fleet dove into the chaos. Krillian ships turned to face this unexpected threat, momentarily distracted from their bombardment. That moment was all Hyun-woo needed. Strike teams, launch, he commanded. Secure the spaceports, medical personnel to the surface, transports begin loading civilians. The battle was not elegant. Humans did not have the numbers or firepower to defeat the Krillian forces, but they did not need to win. They just needed to buy time. For 3 days and nights, Human ships fought a desperate holding action. They used every trick they had learned in 50 years of being underestimated. Hit and run attacks, electronic warfare that confused Krillian sensors, coordinated strikes that destroyed key command vessels and threw the enemy into temporary disarray. On the surface, human medical teams worked in burning hospitals, pulling out the wounded. Human soldiers held evacuation zones against Krillian ground forces. Human transports landed again and again, loading desperate refugees beyond their safe capacity. Then struggling back to orbit, the galaxy watched in real time. News feeds from a dozen species broadcast the human effort. Not council propaganda, but independent journalists showing the truth. Commander Hyun-woo's destroyer took heavy damage on the second day, losing shields and main engines, but his guns still worked, so he kept fighting. Sir, we have evacuated 1.8 million Venari, his operations officer reported. The Krillians are massing for a final push. We cannot hold much longer. How many civilians are still waiting? Hyun-woo asked. 200,000, sir. Then we hold, he said simply. On the third day, the last transport lifted off from the Venari capital. Hyun-woo's battered fleet began fighting their way out of the system, protecting the fleeing civilians. They had saved 2 million lives in 72 hours. The council was still debating. The impact rippled across the galaxy like a shockwave. 4 minor species formally requested protection agreements with Earth. 7 more opened secret diplomatic channels. 24 others began quietly questioning their council representatives about why humanity could act in 3 days while the council needed 3 weeks. Yon coordinated from Horizon Station as the requests flooded in. Species that had been too afraid to associate with rogue humanity now saw Earth as their best hope for protection. We are receiving formal applications from the Fovery Federation, the Delcary Collective, the Talaxian Systems, and the Free Corsair Worlds, her aide reported. They wish to establish what they are calling the Coalition of Free Worlds with Earth as a founding member. What about the Council response? Threats, mostly. They say any species that joins this coalition will face sanctions. But Ambassador, their threats ring hollow now. Everyone watched the Venari rescue. Everyone saw the difference between human action and council debate. The Coalition of Free Worlds formed quietly over the following weeks. No grand ceremony, no official declaration, just species quietly signing mutual defense pacts, opening trade routes, sharing technology and resources. 12 species at first, then 20, then 30. The galaxy was fracturing, and the council was panicking. On Nexus Prime, Speaker Vorn Tax convened another emergency session. The chamber that had laughed at Ambassador Min-jun Park 6 months ago was now filled with frightened, angry delegates. This cannot continue, a Morgothi delegate shouted. Humanity is undermining our authority. They are providing what we failed to provide, a quieter voice countered. It belonged to Ambassador Thel Ross, of the Centaxian Unity, one of the Council's oldest members. The Venari petitioned us for help. We debated for 3 days while their world burned. Earth acted immediately. What does that say about us? It says humanity is reckless. Vorntax snapped. They act without consensus, without proper authorization. They act while people are dying, Thelros replied. Perhaps that is the point. The debate raged for hours. Council unity was cracking. Some species wanted to reconcile with Earth. Others demanded punishment. A few were quietly preparing their own withdrawal applications. Intelligence reports showed the true scale of the problem. Council trade revenues down 30%. Shipping routes disrupted. Technology sectors struggling without human innovation. Border conflicts increasing because Council peacekeeping forces were stretched thin. 3 major Council species were maintaining secret trade with Earth despite official sanctions. The sanctions were not working. Nothing was working. The galaxy was changing, and the Council was losing control. Yon stood on the observation deck of Horizon Station, watching ships from 30 different species moving through the traffic lanes. Some carried cargo. Others transported refugees to new homes. A few were military vessels, protecting the growing coalition territory. Her father had walked out of the council chamber in defiance. She was building what came after. The question was whether the council would accept the new reality or try to fight it. She suspected she already knew the answer. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 6 hours when the hardline faction finally made their move. "Enough discussion," roared Admiral Krextar, the Morgothi military commander. His holographic image dominated the center of the council chamber. Earth has become a threat to galactic order. Their coalition of free worlds is nothing but a rebellion against legitimate authority. We must respond with force. Speaker Vorntax hesitated. Military action against Earth would be unprecedented. They are not attacking us. They are simply destroying everything we built. Krextar interrupted. 37 species have left the Council or established secret agreements with humanity. Our authority crumbles while we talk. I say we send a fleet to Earth itself. Show them the consequences of their arrogance. And if they fight back? A moderate delegate asked. Human military capabilities have proven formidable. They have 20 colonies and perhaps 200 military vessels, Krextar said dismissively. The Council can deploy 5,000 ships. They would not dare resist. The vote was called. The moderates fought hard, but fear won. The Council authorized a massive show of force, not to attack Earth directly, but to assert control in disputed territories. The target was the Outer Rim refugee camps. 3 species in the Outer Rim had been displaced by warlords taking advantage of Council weakness. Earth had responded immediately, establishing massive relief camps that sheltered 4 million refugees. Human construction crews were building permanent settlements. Human medical teams treated the sick and injured. Human military forces hunted down the warlords with cold efficiency. The Council had done nothing until Earth made them look bad. Now they wanted to take control of the situation and take credit for the relief effort. Admiral Krextar himself would lead 200 Council warships to the refugee zones. They would escort human forces out and establish proper Council authority. Dr. Sang-Hoon Choi received the news in his medical tent on Refugee World 7. Around him, human doctors worked alongside Fovari nurses and Delcari medics, treating patients from 6 different species. They want us to leave? He asked incredulously. We have 4 million people depending on us. The Council is sending a fleet, his aide explained. They say human presence in the Outer Rim is destabilizing. They want to take over the relief operation. Sang-Hoon looked around the camp. Neat rows of prefabricated shelters stretched to the horizon. Clean water systems, food distribution centers, schools for refugee children. The humans had built all this in 3 months. Tell Admiral Shin, Sang-Hoon said quietly. We are not leaving. Admiral Tae-Young Shin commanded the human forces in the Outer Rim from her flagship, the Indomitable. When the message came about the Council fleet, she immediately began calculating odds. 40 human vessels in this sector, her tactical officer reported. 200 Council ships incoming, plus whatever they have in reserve. Time to arrival? 6 hours. Tae-Young leaned back in her command chair. She had fought pirates, warlords, and Krillian raiders. She had never faced the full might of the Council military. Send a message to Ambassador Yeon Park, she said. Tell her we need help. The message reached Horizon Station and spread through the coalition network in minutes. Yeon did not hesitate. Send the call, she ordered. All coalition vessels. Emergency response requested. The coalition of free worlds was young and untested. No one knew if species would actually fight for each other. Mutual defense pacts looked good on paper, but when the shooting started, would they honor their commitments? The Council fleet arrived at Refugee World 7 in a massive display of force. 200 warships materialized from hyperspace in perfect formation. Their weapons powered, but not yet locked on targets. Admiral Krextar opened a communication channel. His voice boomed across all frequencies. Human forces, This is Council Fleet Command. You are ordered to cease operations in this sector immediately. Withdraw your personnel and vessels. This territory falls under Council jurisdiction. You have 1 standard hour to comply. On the Indomitable, Admiral Shin stood on her bridge, looking at the overwhelming force arrayed against her small fleet. 40 ships against 200. There was no way to win this fight. Admiral, we have incoming jump signatures, her sensor officer called out. Multiple contacts. Very large formation. The stars rippled as ships dropped out of hyperspace. Not human ships. Coalition vessels. 50 Fovari cruisers arrived first, their sleek hulls bristling with weapons. Then 40 Delcari destroyers. 20 Talaxian carriers. 15 Centaxian battleships. Ships from 24 species, all displaying coalition insignia. 150 vessels appeared in less than 3 minutes. The Council fleet suddenly found themselves outnumbered. Admiral Krextar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Where did they all come from? See. His operations officer checked the transponders. Fovari Federation, Delcari Collective, Talaxian Systems. Sir, these are all coalition species. They are taking defensive positions around the human vessels. On the Indomitable, Admiral Shin allowed herself a small smile. Open a channel. Her face appeared on every ship's display in both fleets. Admiral Krextar. This is Admiral Shin of the Earth Defense Forces. As you can see, we are not alone. The coalition of free worlds stands together. If you wish to remove us from this sector, you will have to go through all of us. Krextar's expression twisted with rage. You dare threaten Council forces? I dare protect 4 million refugees who depend on us, Shin replied. The standoff held. 2 fleets faced each other across a few thousand kilometers of space. Weapons locked. Firing solutions calculated. 1 nervous gunner. Away from a war that would engulf the galaxy. In the Council fleet, ship captains were sending urgent messages to Krextar. Fighting the coalition would mean fighting dozens of species. Even if they won, the casualties would be enormous. The political fallout would destroy the Council completely. Krextar knew it too. But admitting defeat meant humiliation. This is not over, he finally said. The Council will not tolerate this rebellion. Call it what you like, Shin replied. But today, you will not remove us. Tomorrow, you will not remove us. Every day you waste threatening us is another day these refugees have food, shelter, and safety. Is your pride worth their lives? The channel went silent. For 5 long minutes, the fleets held position. Then the Council ships began turning away. One by one, they jumped to hyperspace. Within 30 minutes, the entire fleet was gone. The coalition vessels remained, protecting the camps. Ships from 30 different species, working together because Earth had shown them cooperation was possible. On the refugee world below, Dr. Sang-Hoon Choi watched the orbital display with tears in his eyes. The patients around him cheered weakly, those who had strength to make sound. We stayed, he whispered. We stayed and helped them. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The Council fleet had backed down. The mighty Galactic Council, enforcers of order for thousands of years, had retreated without firing a shot. The political shockwaves were immediate. 7 more species formally withdrew from the Council. 20 others suspended their contributions and stopped attending sessions. The Council's authority was collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. On Nexus Prime, Speaker Vorn Tax received the reports in stunned silence. The Council was fracturing. Their military had been humiliated. Their economic power was fading. Everything they had built for millennia was crumbling. Contact Earth, he finally said quietly. Request a diplomatic meeting. Informal. Private. Place. His aide stared. Sir? Do it, Vorntak snapped. Before we lose everything. Ambassador Minjun Park stood on Earth, looking up at the blue sky he had not seen in years. Geneva's mountains rose in the distance, snow-capped and eternal. He had spent so long in the sterile environments of space stations that he had almost forgotten how beautiful home could be. Behind him, the new diplomatic complex was still under construction. Workers from 15 different species moved among the scaffolding, building a meeting place designed for cooperation rather than domination. "Father," a voice called. Jan walked across the plaza, her formal diplomatic attire replaced with comfortable Earth clothing. "They are arriving." Minjun nodded. 18 months since he had walked out of the council chamber. 18 months of chaos, conflict, and change. Now, the council was coming to Earth, not as masters but as equals seeking a new arrangement. The first ships descended through the atmosphere in a steady stream. Not warships this time. Diplomatic vessels carrying representatives from over 100 species. Some were council members. Some were coalition members. Many were unaffiliated, watching carefully to see which side would offer the better future. Speaker Vorntax arrived with a small entourage. He looked older, his scales duller. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been respect, or might have been fear. "Ambassador Park," he said formally. "Thank you for agreeing to host this summit. You are welcome on Earth." Minjun replied with equal formality. "Please, we have prepared accommodations for all delegations." The summit took 3 weeks. There were no grand speeches on the first day, no dramatic declarations, just species gathering to talk about what came next. The council representatives wanted to preserve some form of their old authority. They proposed reforms, limited terms for leadership positions, better response times for crisis situations, reduced restrictions on member species. It was too little, too late. "The problem is not the rules," Minjun explained during one session. "The problem is the fundamental assumption. You built a system where some species have authority over others, where compliance is mandatory and independence is punished, where protecting the weak is called violation of protocol. We maintained order for thousands of years," Vorntax protested. "You maintained the status quo," Minjun countered. "There is a difference. Order that comes from fear and compulsion is not order. It is just delayed chaos." The debates continued day after day. Some council species accepted that their old system was finished. Others clung desperately to the past. A few actually listened and tried to understand what humanity was offering. The turning point came during testimony from the refugee species. Representatives from the Venari, Fovari, Delcari, and 24 others who had been saved by human intervention. A young Venari named Kelorin spoke about watching her city burn while the council debated jurisdiction. About human ships, arriving like angels, pulling her family from the rubble. About finding safety in coalition space when her own government had abandoned her. "The council told us to be patient," she said, her voice breaking. "They said proper procedures took time. But my little brother died while they argued about authorization codes. Earth did not ask for permission to save us. They just saved us." The chamber was silent when she finished. Even the hardest council delegates looked uncomfortable. On the 5th day, Ambassador Thelros, of the Centaxian Unity, asked for private meeting with Minjun. The Centaxians were one of the council's founding species, their authority going back millennia. They met in a small garden, away from the crowds and cameras. "My people wish to withdraw from the council and petition to join your coalition," Thelros said without preamble. Minjun studied the elderly Centaxian carefully. "That would effectively end the council. Your species has been its backbone for 2,000 years. "Yes," Thelros agreed. "Which is why I understand better than anyone how broken it has become. We built something good once, but we became comfortable, bureaucratic, indifferent. We forgot that the purpose of civilization is not to maintain itself, but to protect and nurture those within it. The coalition is young and imperfect," Minjun warned. "We make mistakes. We struggle with difficult decisions. But you make decisions, Thelros replied. When the Venari needed help, you helped. When refugees needed shelter, you sheltered them. When threatened, your allies came to your defense. Not because treaties required it, but because you had earned their loyalty through demonstrated care. That is the foundation of real community. The Centaxian withdrawal was announced on the 7th day. 3 more major council species followed within hours. By the end of the week, the Galactic Council effectively ceased to exist as a governing body. Speaker Vorntax approached Minjun on the summit's final day. You have won, he said bitterly. The council is finished. This was not about winning, Minjun replied. It was about offering an alternative. What happens to us now? The species that supported the council? Minjun gestured to the crowds of delegates moving through the complex. You join the rest of the galaxy in figuring out how to live together without someone enforcing compliance. The coalition is open to all species who accept its principles: voluntary cooperation, mutual defense, protection of the vulnerable, accountability for crimes. If your species accepts those principles, you are welcome. And if we do not, then you remain independent, and we will treat you as we treat all independent species, with respect, as long as you show respect in return. But you will not get special authority. You will not get to make rules for others. The age of the council is over. Vorntax looked out over the crowds. Species that had been enemies were talking. Former council members were negotiating with former rebels. The chaos terrified him. But underneath the chaos, something new was growing. What do you call this new order? He asked quietly. The Galactic Cooperative, Minjun replied. No one species in charge. No mandatory compliance. Just voluntary cooperation and mutual support. It will never work. Too much diversity, too many conflicts, too little structure. Perhaps, Minjun acknowledged, but we would rather fail trying to build something good than succeed maintaining something broken. The summit concluded with the formal establishment of the Galactic Cooperative. 73 species signed the founding charter. 30 more requested observer status. Even some former council species applied for membership. Earth was named as one of 12 guarantor species, responsible for ensuring the cooperative's principles were maintained. Not rulers, not enforcers, just guarantors. Humanity's military became the core of the cooperative's peacekeeping forces. Human innovation centers became hubs for shared technological development. Human colonies became safe havens for refugees and displaced populations. 3 years later, Commander Ji-hoon Park stood on the bridge of his patrol cruiser, grandson of the ambassador who had started everything. His ship patrolled the border regions, protecting trade routes and responding to distress calls. Sir, we are receiving a request for assistance, his communications officer reported. A mining colony is being threatened by raiders. They are asking for immediate help. How far? 6 hours at maximum speed. Ji-hoon did not hesitate. All ships, prepare for jump. We are going to help them. No debate, no committee meetings, no jurisdictional questions. Just help. That was the difference. On Earth, Minjun walked through the completed diplomatic complex. Flags from 200 species hung in the central plaza, representing the growing cooperative. Every day, more species joined. Every week, the old ways faded further. The galaxy would never be perfect. There would always be conflicts, always be species that rejected cooperation, always be new challenges. But there would also always be species willing to help each other, willing to protect the vulnerable, willing to choose difficult right over easy wrong. Minjun thought back to the council chamber 18 months ago, when they had laughed at Earth's withdrawal. They thought humanity needed them. They were wrong. The galaxy had needed someone to show them a better way. Someone to prove that cooperation worked better than compulsion. Someone to demonstrate that protecting the innocent was not weakness, but the highest calling of civilization. Earth had broken ties with the Galactic Council and left the universe in panic. But from that panic came something better. A galaxy learning to work together not because they had to, but because they chose to. That was worth any price. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.